From Newzroom Afrika Studios in Johannesburg, welcome to this week's edition of This Week in Politics. My name is Vuyo Mvoko. Thank you for joining us.
Well, I can answer that for the President. It's for him. No, seriously.
I'd rather have him answer.
Yeah, I'd rather answer that. It will be,
Our President will respond to you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. President.
it will take President Trump listening to the voices of South Africans, some of whom are his good friends, like those who are here. When we have talks between us on the quiet table, it will take President Trump to listen to them. I'm not going to be repeating what I've been saying. I would say if there was Afrikaner farmer genocide, I can bet you these three gentlemen would not be here.
US President Donald Trump ups the ante in his confrontational attitude towards South Africa. But can he exclude President Cyril Ramaphosa and his team from the G20 meetings over the next year? And if he does, whose loss will it be anyway?
In my view, Mr. Matlala, you're not a businessman. You're a crook.
I am.
You're a thief. You're a fraud. And you're corrupt.
MPs take no prisoners as Parliament spends days in jail with alleged criminal underworld mastermind Vusimuzi Cat Matlala. Was it worth it?
Importantly, we are seeing ongoing and significant reductions in serious and violent crime, but at a high level. And one rape, one murder, one assault is, of course, too many.
Police Minister Firoz Kacharia finally releases crime stats. At about the same time, the courts got to eventually hear the MK Party's application to have his appointment nullified. And speaking of the MK Party, its MP, Duruzile Zuma Sambuda, has resigned this week following allegations that she recruited and trafficked a group of young South African men into the Russian war effort in Ukraine. The party, meanwhile, has put a cat among pigeons in KwaZulu-Natal. A day before its birthday next month, the MK Party will table a motion of no confidence in Premier Thami Nduli, something that may upset the apple cart for the provincial government consisting of the IFP, the ANC, the DA, and the NFP in that province. All that and more in today's edition of This Week in Politics, which starts right now. Not altogether surprising or shocking even, but yes, he did it. US President Donald Trump announcing via social media as usual that South Africa won't be invited to next year's G20 Leaders Summit to be hosted in America. The rebuke follows a year of acrimony marked by a big lie that the American president keeps repeating, which he repeated again this week, that there's a genocide against Afrikaners in this country. Rattled this time by President Ramaphosa's refusal to hand over the G20 presidency to a junior US embassy official, President Trump also announced that his administration will immediately stop all payments and subsidies to South Africa. Now, a day after the announcement, our senior politics reporter, Siyanda Ngobo, sat down with presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya.
Well, the fallout from South Africa's successful G20 Leaders Summit this last weekend continues, with United States President Donald Trump threatening to exclude South Africa from next year's gathering. He says this is because the South African government is continuing to kill white people and nothing is being done about it. But yesterday, the South African presidency pushing back, saying that South Africa is a sovereign state and that Trump's comments are regrettable. Let's bring in the presidency spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya. Thanks for your time. I mean, I've been going through some of the comments that Trump has made, and it's very clear, you and I were in Washington in May, that whatever the South African government says, Trump and his government are not willing to listen?
Indeed, and in fact, we are now focusing on what we call functional aspects of the relationship, business to business, engagements with civil society from the United States, people-to-people exchanges, and accepting that at the highest level of political leadership between the US and South Africa, we may not be able to reset the relationship as we had intended, despite numerous attempts and efforts to reset the relationship.
I mean, a low-key handover did take place, I think it was on Monday, where as the International Relations Minister, Ronald Lamola, had promised that at the level at which the United States Embassy meets us, we will meet them at the same level of respect. But legally speaking, Mr. Magwenya, Trump can't exclude you. South Africa is a G20 member in its own right.
Well, his action is actually threatening to collapse the G20 because it goes against the values and the principles of the G20. South Africa is one of the founding members of the G20. It will require consensus amongst the members to either uninvite a country or invite a country. You will recall in 2022 there were attempts to remove Russia. Those attempts did not succeed because they couldn't find consensus. Equally now, we doubt that, in fact, not that we doubt, President Trump will not find any consensus around uninviting South Africa.
Speaking of consensus, I mean, one of the greatest successes that have been spoken about our G20 presidency is how the international community, in fact, other G20 members stood shoulder to shoulder with South Africa when the United States, in particular Donald Trump, was trying to bully us. What expectations does the president and the South African government have in pushing back again against this latest attempt? I mean, there's speculation that by the time that summit is held in Miami, no one will be there.
Well, already we've seen a public expression of support from the German ambassador to South Africa. Ideally, we would love to see more voices coming out, particularly from the African Union. But be that as it may, Zianda, what we're focusing on now is working with partners such as France and the UK in ensuring that we do not lose the momentum coming out of this G20 that was held here, going into future iterations of the G20. France is the G7 president. They've already extended an invite to South Africa. President Macron has already undertaken that commitment to ensure that that momentum is not lost. We strongly believe that the UK will adopt a similar stance in terms of ensuring that the substance of our G20 in terms of outcomes is not lost. And so we may have to look beyond 2026 and look at how we constructively move forward with the other partners within the grouping.
Speaking of moving beyond, 2026, there is a troika. I mean, there are systems within G20 that exist, and the troika includes rather the past, the present, and the future presidency of the G20, which would be South Africa, the United States, and the UK for 2027. So if Trump is threatening to say, well, you can't come to Miami, are you trying to, what's your understanding of that? Does it mean that the troika is going to collapse because you still need to form part of the preparatory processes for next year's summit?
There's a first meeting on the 16th of December of the Sherpas that is scheduled to take place in Washington. We do not know what will happen with respect to our Sherpa and the Sioux Sherpas that are expected to attend that meeting. We suspect there may be denied entry, there may be refused visas. We will deal with that occurrence when it does occur. Suffice to say, we are looking at beyond the US-led G20. It's not going to be helpful for us to spend a lot of energy begging to be admitted into the US when there's no desire to do so. What gives us comfort is that we are aligned with all of our partners with the outcomes of this G20 and going forward. And so we'll have to look at ways of circumventing the sort of temporary blip that the U.S. is going to cause in the process.
I mean, how temporary is it really, Mr. Magwenya? I was opening up the declaration because in paragraph 121, this declaration, which was adopted with consensus at the recent summit, it says, we reiterate our commitment to the G20 as the premier forum for international economic cooperation and its continued, in the spirit of multilateralism. And then in the next paragraph, it says, we thank South Africa for its leadership this year. We commit to working together under the United States presidency in 2026 and meeting again in the United Kingdom in 2027 and the Republic of Korea in 2028. So it's very clear that even the South African government did almost throw, or wave the white flag to say we remain committed. But it's very clear that Trump is still meting out transactional diplomacy. How else can this forum navigate this space?
Well, two things there. One, we've seen that President Trump doesn't conform to established norms of diplomatic engagements. And so we don't think anything is going to change with respect to the G20. The announcement yesterday already demonstrates that disregard of those established norms of diplomatic courtesies as well as engagements. Secondly, in our statement, we did make a call to G20 members to reaffirm all of these principles and values that you've just alluded to that are expressed in the declaration. And so we will see, or rather we'll wait to see how other members of the G20 respond in this regard.
And what's the president had to say about all of this? Because in many aspects leading up to the summit, I think the United States government got a bit personal. They said the president was running his mouth. I can tell you that many South Africans found that deeply offensive.
Well, President Ramaphosa feels that he's done his best to reach out to President Trump. He's done his best to put the country's interest before everything and anything else, considering the importance of the trade relationship with the U.S. And he feels that he's made enough attempts to get a reset of the diplomatic relationship. However, at a certain point, you have to then accept the reality before you. And that reality is that we may not be able to achieve that reset. Hence, we now want to focus on other functional aspects of the relationship, understanding that President Trump is not going to be leading the U.S. forever.
Absolutely. Vincent Magwenya, spokesperson for the presidency, just speaking to us about the latest fallout and the response from U.S. President Donald Trump, releasing on his Truth Social platform that South Africa will not be invited to the summit next year, and that because the South African government didn't allow a delegation from the United States to fetch that gavel, that there are consequences from that, but very clear that the international community is still standing shoulder to shoulder with our nation in affirming its sovereignty and standing up to the Trump administration.
Ziana Ngobo with the presidential spokesperson on what the president's office thinks of this development. What does Parliament, the other arm of the state, for its part, think of this development? Well, I spoke to the chairperson of the National Assembly's International Relations Portfolio Committee.
If President Trump is going to adopt a posture that says that one member state, which is South Africa, out of the 19 member states that attended the G20 must be punished, it means he's taking a stance against the other 19 member states that were the 18 member states that participated in the G20, and therefore the matter may have to arise in the Troika, because the Troika now of the G20 is South Africa, the UK, and the United States of America. So it's beyond South Africa as such. But as the president said, we are not going to allow the US or any other country to dictate terms to South Africa.
After this short ad break, I speak to Ibrahim Rasool, the former South African ambassador to the United States. Welcome back. You're watching This Week in Politics. Now, a couple of days before Trump's announcement, I sat down with South Africa's former ambassador to the US, Ibrahim Rasool. He's now, as you will all know, a persona non grata in the US following his expulsion for making unflattering remarks about Trump and his policies. I began by asking Rasool whether he felt his country's much-hailed hosting of the G20 summit last weekend was, in a sense, a sweet revenge for him.
I think it's not so much revenge as injustice being served. I think the world needed to see that things can happen despite and in the absence of the US president. He needed to see he's not as powerful as he thinks. He needed to see that those that he thinks are either afraid of him or his allies would come to South Africa nonetheless. Even the Italian Prime Minister, even the Argentinians, even Saudi Arabia that he saw recently in the White House. I think he needed to see that, and it must be a wake-up call for him.
Do you think it will be a wake-up call for him, given how he tends to conduct himself?
He's not a person who shows remorse. He's a person who doubles down when he's in trouble. But I do think what he does respect, and that's what our president displayed enormously over this last few weeks, is that he respects strength. He respects backbone. We've tried the route for much of this G20 president of appeasement. When the president switched gears towards what I call a contingency scenario, where we look who are our allies and how do we hold hands, how do we build a multilateral system so that we don't stand alone against him, and how do we take out insurance policies, find sources of funds, sources of energy from different places, then Donald Trump begins to be more measured. He only respects that. We only need to look at his back down on Mamdani in the White House. We only need to look that now on Saturday, when he woke up, the declaration was passed. And then all he said, South Africa was not playing by the rules. He never plays by the rules. And now he says, what the heck? Did South Africa just do this? And that, I think, is the beginning of respect.
Let's say the penny doesn't drop, right? And he continues to behave the way he has been behaving. What would you say what would be the consequences for him and his administration? In other words, do you think that the world, on the back of this G20, the declaration that was adopted, and how everything went, do you think that is it too early to say perhaps the world has indeed begun to reimagine a world without the US altogether?
I think that's what brought this remarkable consensus together. And of course, the president had enough wordsmiths to soften the language, to keep Saudi Arabia in, to soften this issue, to bring in Argentina, not to make people too scared to confront him. But I was in Europe up till Saturday morning, and I had gone to Chatham House, I had gone to various places in Netherlands and so forth. And for lots of Europe, the penny dropped when Donald Trump's peace plan on Ukraine coincided with the talking points of Russia. Then they knew they were on their own. Then they knew they needed to hold hands here at the G20 in much the same way that the Muslim world feels that we've got this ceasefire, but we don't know where it's going to go. So let's take out this insurance policy with the G20. So I think people are waking up to it. I think President Trump is next year going to try and narrow the agenda. He may even try to weed out countries like South Africa. We must brace for that. We must sit out next year. But when we are invited, go for the financial issues, the macroeconomic policies that he wants to discuss, and confine ourselves. But around that, I think we have so much in this declaration that will keep the world busy for a while. Africa centrality is critical. I think the move that we played on critical minerals is the holy grail for the United States, and he knows that we are snookering him on how we're going to manage all of those kind of things. And I think he's going to learn new respect, but that doesn't mean he changes his behavior.
But what are the chances of the USA's presidency rolling back some of the gains that have been made, especially over the past three G20s, where you've had India, you've had Brazil, and now South Africa? What are the chances of a lot of the work that was done over the past few years being rolled back?
You see, President Trump has played his trump card by cutting off all aid, all health, all AGOA is effectively dead, putting 30% tariffs on South Africa and all other countries. He's played the trump card that he has played, so what is left, we don't need to fear as much. What he's going to do, he's going to try and nullify the climate issues in the declaration. He's going to try and nullify the gender and women and youth issues because that's DEI, according to him. He's going to try and do a lot of those kind of things, but that's what we braced for in the first place. And so we must just stay in the brace position and move those things to where they belong. And so how do we take the health agenda, push it into the replenishing, the global fund? How do we take the climate agenda, push it into COP17? Already, other countries in Europe are coming together and saying, we'll fund part of your just energy transition. So the insurance policies that we have taken out will lessen the shock. And that, I think, is the cleverness of what has happened over this past weekend, that we moved to a contingency scenario and we have been able, therefore, to brace ourselves and to have insurance policies as we go forward.
Do you think he may look to perhaps refresh or reset even his relationships with traditional allies like your United Kingdoms, for example, to sort of keep some of his traditional allies, in other words, not allow a situation where everybody just deserts him?
You see, I think President Trump will be fully conscious of the fact that America first is increasingly becoming America alone. And for him to start running after countries is unprecedented. And so that's a great spot to be in. He will try, like he's done, for example, with Australia, to say, I'll put my Navy in Perth to patrol the Pacific, but I will sign an offtake agreement with you for all your critical minerals. So he's going to try and find those kind of deals, but already he is doing that because the correspondence out of Washington is that he is saying, no, don't worry about this Ukraine, this 28 point. It's up for negotiations. It's only the first draft. That's unprecedented for President Trump. And I think that what it means is that multilateralism is emerging strongly again. We're over the shock and awe of the Trump executive orders. We've been tested with tariffs and trade wars and aid cuts, and we've survived it. The great thing about the declaration is it's saying, listen, we've got to find our own sources of funding within Africa. Let's set up this team. South Africa will manage this team, and we will look at how we can fund it. And the rest of the world is saying, we are with you. Because you see, the rest of the world understands what Mr. Trump doesn't understand at this point. That when you give us a goer, you are not doing us a favor. When you are giving us preferential trade, you're not doing us a favor. When you give us aid and health services and PEPFAR and so on, you're not doing. What you are doing is you are exchanging the tangible, US funds and US markets, for the intangible. Because for as long as we can look after our people don't migrate. For as long as our people feel secure at home, they don't become a threat to the rest of the world. For as long as diseases are prevented and managed here, we don't have the threat of global pandemics. And that is what Europe has understood. It's what the rest of the world has understood. And that's what Mr. Trump is going to learn, to his great horror, if he doesn't maintain the exchange of the tangible for the intangible.
Let's bring closer to home. Do you have hope that we will reach a trade deal agreement anytime soon?
I think that South Africa will reach a trade agreement if we are absolutely conscious of our leverages and what cards we have. We have upward of 70% of the world's platinum, and no car can drive without it. We have the chromium and other things. Africa commands 30% of the critical minerals. That, amongst many others, would be the holy grail, as I said, that Mr. Trump wants. But we need more consciously to operate with it in the same way that China doesn't retaliate. It played dominoes with Mr. Trump. He said 125% tariffs. They said 120. When he went to 250, they said, we're now playing chess. We'll just withhold the critical minerals. And Mr. Trump had to contrive a meeting in South Korea with the Chinese in order to win a year's reprieve. Now, that's what is respect. We don't have the cards that China has, but we have some cards that I think we need to play more consciously. And very importantly, we now know, as President Ramaphosa has shown, that we have convening power. We have moral power. When Mr. Trump says, I'm not coming to the G20 because you are making a genocide against white people, the world knows it's false. But he's weakened his moral case. Had he said, for example, we just want to focus on a macroeconomic agenda, that's why we're not coming, they're discussing everything, the world may have doubted whether who was right and wrong. Did we deviate from the agenda? Did he boycott? But because he used the old stereotype of discredited idea of genocide, land confiscation, and so forth, he muddied his own case in the audience of the world, and very importantly, that global public has already sided with South Africa. Whether we win the legal case in the ICJ or not against Israel, global opinion has shifted behind South Africa's moral position on that matter.
But what, though, are the cards we have, that which you say, or at least imply, we still haven't used?
I think we have started to flex our muscle with an insertion into the G20 declaration about how we prefer to use our critical minerals. That is throwing down a card to say, watch the space. We are going to be a lot more jealously guarding. It's not extraction as usual. We're going to do it. Had Mr. Trump not threatened Nigeria, Africa may have been split on that. But when Nigeria, who's been very accommodating, very appeasing, when they get threatened, then suddenly Africa starts to say, no, we've got to hang together, otherwise we fall together. And so we need to reinsert ourselves into the African context in a manner that we haven't seen since the days, for example, of President Mbeki, that we become the foundation on which the African prosperity and development will grow. So that's the second major card. The third one is BRICS isn't ready to become confrontational. There's too many disparate things within BRICS. But the threat of BRICS is more important than the fact of BRICS at this moment, and that's what Mr. Trump is trying to manage. How do you stop this becoming the kind of bloc? How do you make sure that the D word never enters again into the lexicon, the D word being de-dollarization? That's what they were very afraid of when I was there, because a thought, once thought, can't be unthought. And all of these things are happening. So BRICS becomes absolutely critical. And I think South Africa emerging as craftily under the leadership of President Ramaphosa out of this G20, suddenly the world is saying South Africa's geopolitical positioning is back. We missed it. We missed the kind of courage that South Africa used to display. It seems to be back, and that becomes an absolutely critical. Our convening power is a critical issue that we must play amongst our cards.
Joining us now for the last word on this Trump matter is political analyst Professor Oscar van Heerden. Prof, thank you very much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. One thing I'm trying to understand is how a Donald Trump can do what he promises to do and get away with it, given the fact that this is a club that doesn't belong only to himself, to do as he pleases with it, but a club comprising of many people and blocs who generally rule by consensus.
Good day, Vuyo. You know, Vuyo, he hasn't gotten away with it. Let's be clear. He simply made an announcement on an unofficial communique, Truth Social. The South African government have not received any formal communications saying that they are not going to be invited to the G20. So he has not gotten away with it. You have already seen that, surprisingly, one of the European allies, Chancellor Merz, already came out saying that he doesn't agree with this, that he thinks that it is critically important that South Africa be part of the G20 next year. So, and I suspect we are going to see further fissures, particularly first and foremost from the BRICS alliance countries. So your Brazil, Russia, India, and China is going to object to South Africa not being invited. And if he continues with his intransigence, then I think some European countries are also going to say this is not the done thing.
Do you think the time has come, or that all these countries and bloc will in fact have the courage to stand up to Donald Trump and his administration in ways that perhaps they've never done before? Do you get a sense that that moment has arrived, to even, as I asked Ibrahim Rasool earlier in the week, that the time has come for the world to say we ought to be looking beyond a Donald Trump or an American or domination by the United States. Has that time come? And if so, where are the signs?
You know, people have studied the fall of empires. We have had many empires over centuries, and we've seen the signs. We know, for example, empires fall when they are overstretched. 800 military bases all over the world that has to be maintained by the United States of America. It is no accident that the Trump administration is now withdrawing aid and sponsors and charities and so forth, everything and anything to try and save a buck and bring it back to the United States of America. Because of capitalism and the exportation of manufacturing base to the Far East, workers in America are suffering. People can hardly afford to live. And the problem is that they have to do 2 or 3 jobs, and yet Trump is pushing tariffs on all countries and so on. So these are the telltale signs of an empire that is in serious trouble, and that's why Trump is doing what he's doing out of desperation.
Now, what about the fact that, I mean, this summit at the weekend had a declaration? Those are commitments. It's an agenda that needs or has to be pursued over the next year. Now, giving that to someone who clearly has no appetite for a lot of things that are in that declaration, adds to that the fact that his nose is out of joint. To what extent? What are the levers that the other countries or member states and blocs actually have? How will they ensure that the agenda is not rolled back by this individual?
You know, Vuyo, the reason why fellow G7 leaders decided to defy Donald Trump and come and honor the invitation from the presidency of the G20 in Johannesburg is because they wanted to send a clear message to Trump that we can only resolve problems through multilateral fora. Multilateralism is the answer, not wanting to do it alone. And I think here we've seen that the Trump administration is anti-multilateralism. They have withdrawn from the World Health Organization. They have withdrawn from the Paris Accord in terms of climate. They have instituted sanctions against the International Criminal Court. They don't like multilateralism. And I think Europe and the Far East, together with Africa, came together in Johannesburg and sent a clear message to Trump that this is the future. And if you don't want to be part of it, if you don't want to be in the room, if you don't want to be in the tent, then so be it. So those commitments that you refer to that came out of the Johannesburg G20, I think that all leaders that gave consensus to that declaration is going to fulfill their commitments with or without the United States.
Closer to home, are we going to survive the onslaught, as it were, because the Trump administration seems determined to really have a go at South Africa? Do you see a trade deal anytime soon? How do you see our future relations with the United States of America?
Look, I mean, the South Africans are the mature adults in the room. They will continue with diplomacy. They will continue to try and mend the battered relationship with the United States. Minister Parks Tau and Steenhuisen and others have assured us that they are very close to a deal. It will be a bad deal. No wonders there. It will be a bad deal for us, but it will be a deal nonetheless. Trump is over-exaggerating his importance in terms of our relations because with the Business 20, which was a parallel structure of the G20, we had all those 600 plus American companies at the Business 20, making it very clear they want to do business with us. So they want to be in South Africa, they want to create jobs for South Africans, they want to benefit. He says that all funding and things are seized with immediate effect. It's very little impact because fortunately we are not that reliant on foreign aid from the United States. It's a drop in the ocean. It's not going to make a huge difference. Already you see the space is being filled by others. China has come forward and put some millions forward for HIV/AIDS and so forth. So, there is my main worry, Vuyo. There is no strategic thinking taking place in Washington, D.C. None. The Trump administration, Marco Rubio, Hegseth, Bissett, all of them, they do not possess the caliber of leadership that can think strategically. And this isolationist approach that they are taking and weaponizing the dollar, weaponizing trade, and now weaponizing the G20 is simply going to be diplomatic faux pas, and it's going to end with egg on their faces.
Professor van Heerden, let me thank you very much for your time and insights. Really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Always.
After the break, former Police Minister Bheki political future hangs in the balance. And so too that of his successor, Senzo Mchunu. That's if some of the things that were said about them this week by alleged criminal kingpin Vuyo Mvoko, among others, in his testimony are indeed true. You're watching This Week in Politics. Would you shut up if you received R500,000 rands from somebody, slept several times in their penthouse, and ordered food for free on their account? Well, those are some of the freebies former Police Minister Bheki reportedly received from alleged criminal underworld mastermind Vusimuzi Cat Matlala. At least that's what the awaiting trial prisoner told MPs who spent days in jail with him at the Kgosi Mampuru maximum security prison this week.
So at what point does he ask you for money? Or do you offer him money? And what amount?
I offered him, the first payment, it was 300,000. So it was in January this year. And for the reason for me to give me that money is because of he asked for money.
He asked for the money.
Yes.
Did he mention 300,000 rand?
No, he actually wanted 1 million rand.
He actually wanted 1 million.
Yes.
And your response was, I can't give you 1 million, but I can give you 300,000.
No, I didn't give him 300,000. I gave him 3, and then again I gave him 2, like I mentioned. And the day I decided to stop, I was supposed to give him 300,000 again, but that never happened. It's when I decided to stop taking his calls.
Cele is, of course, yet to respond to those sensational allegations. But this is what he said during his appearance before the ad hoc committee when he was asked about the times he spent at Matlala's penthouse earlier this year.
It's not because they're acquaintance that I slept in the house. It's because it was a free piece. And I'm not working, I'm a pensioner. So here is it's a nice place, by the way. It's a free piece, so I sleep. I'm not in government. I'm not going to declare. I guess if I were in government, I would have gone and declared, but now I sleep, I wake up, I go home.
When it came to what the MPs thought of Matlala, well, some held no punches.
In my view, Mr. Matlala, you're not a businessman. You're a crook.
I am.
You're a thief, you're a fraud, and you're corrupt. And the problem in this country today is that people like yourself clothe yourself in the respectability of calling yourself a businessman when you are nothing but a dishonest thug. You make an illicit fortune by stealing from the poorest of the poor. It's people like you and your associates that have robbed generations of South African children of their futures. Shame on you, sir.
It was me. I remember very well, even my VIP car, it was broken there outside. They had to fetch me with another car. I was there myself.
I'm saying to you, I sat in that office earlier on when I left this place. A lady collected the remainder of those items on the 31st of December. I put it to you, you claimed that your watches were missing, you claimed that your laptop was missing, you claimed that SAPS has stolen from you, yet you did not open up a case for your watches, your Rolex, your laptop and everything else. You didn't open up no case for that because that wasn't recorded in the SAP 30.
First of all, that is a lie, and second of all, I don't understand then why are you raising your voice because of this? Because I'm not fighting with you.
Because you are worth me raising my voice to.
No, you are also lying because what you're saying is not true.
I saw, so you are saying that I'm blind.
I'm saying that you are not telling the truth.
About 10 kilometers away from where the ad hoc committee met, another senior police officer finding fault with the way another former police minister, Cele's predecessor, Senzo Mchunu, disbanded the political killings task team.
General Mkhwanazi should have been the first person to be notified. People have got a misnomer in their minds.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yes.
General Mkhwanazi should have been the first person to be
notified
about the disbandment.
Yes.
Okay, continue
yes.
from there.
Yes, because, and I hear people throwing this, you are the custodian of the detectives or the dockets. The provincial commissioner is empowered by the Act to look at all issues crime in the province. When we work at national, we work in conjunction with the province. General Mkhwanazi, because he and General Khumalo were responsible, if you look at the minutes, they were the ones reporting on the progress of the PKTT, not the divisional commissioner, not General Khumalo in his capacity as the divisional commissioner for crime intelligence. So General Mkhwanazi would have been, as the chairperson for the province, engaged with the DPP as they do even currently.
Newzroom Afrika has it on good authority that suspended Police Minister Senzo Mchunu will be called to testify at the Madlanga Commission next Tuesday before the Commission issues its first report in a few weeks' time. The acting police minister, meanwhile, finally issued the long-awaited crime statistics on Friday. Newzroom Africa's Zola Sholwana attended the briefing and filed this report.
The current Q2, we have recorded 751 less murders compared to the previous period. In the previous period, we had 6,545. Currently, we are at 5,794, and the percentage reduction is 11.5. We then recorded increase in terms of the sexual offense, 22 counts more, from the previously recorded 12,765 to the current 12,787. That is a 0.2% increase. Then attempted murder, we have also recorded an increase of 194 counts more. That is from 7,061 to 7,255, a 2.7% increase. In comparison of the 9 provinces, we only had recorded increases in 2 provinces, which is the province of the Northern Cape with 146 counts and the Western Cape with 183 counts more. Then the sum total, as I've indicated in the previous slide, the contact crimes reduced by 4,999. And one of the things that we have also added, but we've been adding it for some time, is the last column, the last row at the table there. We also look at the percentage contribution of a particular province to the total of the particular crime category. When you look at contact crimes, the province that is contributing the most to the contact crime is the province of Gauteng, which contributes 26.4%, followed by the province of the Western Cape with 18%. KwaZulu-Natal is number 3 with 17.4%, and the Eastern Cape at number 4 with 10.6%.
Many of you know that shortly after my appointment, I was confronted with the situation in the Western Cape. I have said publicly that we now do have an integrated strategy which is well-resourced to fight the scourge of gang violence in the Western Cape, Eastern Cape, Gauteng, and KwaZulu-Natal, where this problem is particularly located. I am confident that this is the right strategy. The challenge is going to be with implementation. So the ministry will be monitoring the implementation of this strategy on a monthly basis. I can say that while we do not yet see the progress that is necessary, there is some evidence that we are beginning to make progress.
MK Party MP and former President Jacob Zuma's daughter, Duduzile Zuma Sambudla, resigned from Parliament this week. She and her father face a Hawks investigation over allegations of recruiting and trafficking a group of young South African men into the Russian war effort in Ukraine.
The national officials also received a full report from Comrade Duduzile Zuma Sambudla regarding the much publicized matter of young South Africans who are reportedly involved in combat military action in Ukraine. Comrade Duduzile Zuma Sambudla confirmed the contents of an affidavit deposed with the police. Comrade Duduzile Zuma Sambudla has declared her full cooperation with the ongoing investigations by relevant authorities, as a consequence of which Comrade Duduzile Zuma Sambudla has tendered her resignation from the National Assembly and all public representative responsibilities with immediate effect.
The party said it will be reaching out to the families of the young men and that they are working towards their safe return home.
The national officials have accepted Comrade Duduzile Zuma Sambula's decision to resign and support her efforts to ensure that these young South Africans are brought back safely to their families. It became apparently clear after the briefing that Umkhonto weSizwe as a party is not involved in the Russia-Ukraine matter affecting these young people. Having taken this decision yesterday and communicating such a decision today, our next step as national officials is to engage the families and explain our position as a party and support them in their efforts for the safe return of these young people.
And that was This Week in Politics. Thank you very much for joining us.